I have no idea what I'm going to say. And my wife would say the same thing. She says, your lips say things your brain hasn't even thought of yet. And I like it that way. I've got a timer up there. That's a little bit unusual for me as well because I am an instructor. I'm used to teaching over 4 days instead of condensing things into an hour. So because of that, I have to monitor myself so we stay within that time frame. My name is Dale Munson. The reason I'm going to give you that I think you should listen to what I have to say is because I've been doing this for over 15 years. I started back in 2007. I worked for Medtronic, which at the time was Covidian, but became Medtronic. I worked for them for 10 years, a little over 10 years. And then when I got to be 65 years old, they thought that I was too old to work anymore. I'd become a liability to the company. So they disbanded the entire biomed training. I was the author of all of the materials for Medtronic, which was Valley Lab, Covidian, Medtronic, like I said. But I did all of the instructional design on about 8 different generators. I taught 42 out of 52 weeks a year. And in those classes, we'd take all of the equipment and send it around the country. So we had 9 stations with 3 people per station, so 27. So if you do the math on all of this, I've taught over 7,000 students. So the reason I really wanted to do this is because those 7,000 students have these 10 questions that I'm going to talk about this morning. So you can see all those people have questions, and I'm assuming that you have questions as well. That's why you're here. The very first question that isn't one of my 10 is, what is electrosurgery anyway? Because no matter where I go, even to the woman that I was talking to on the airplane last night, we got to talking about something. She says, I told her that I've been retired 2 times. This next time will be my 3rd time. 3rd time's the charm. So she says, what do you do? And I says, I teach electrosurgery. And like everybody else in the world, well, what is electrosurgery? The thing that I want you to remember is that I underlined the word high frequency, because we're going to talk a lot about different questions here, and it all revolves around high frequency. We use it to cut tissue or to stop bleeding, and that's what I told her is the easiest way for me to explain this is that they use a scalpel for the initial incision, and then after that, they use an electrosurgical generator, which does cutting and coagulation, and I'll give you those 2 terms. If Medtronic wants to charge more money for it, they don't say cut and coag, they say dissection and hemostasis. And when you put those on there, it's like somebody saying that it is gourmet. If you put the word gourmet on it, you know you can charge more. So those 2 words are synonymous. But anyways, that's the question that I get a lot from everybody in the world. The second part of this is that I want you to know that 85% of anything that's going on in the operating room probably involves an electrosurgical generator at some point. It's a core tool, not a niche technology. It's been around for a long time. All right, question number 1. This one was important to me personally because I didn't understand it from day one when I went into this field. I said, why isn't it that we're not electrocuting people when we're putting so much current through them? Logical question, right? So I said, I can move my shoulders up and down with a 9-volt battery, and this device right here. Here's this TENS unit. You've probably all heard of a TENS unit. I can move, but the same effect is not produced when I'm using thousands of volts from an electrosurgical generator. Why? And so I didn't really stop to look into this in depth, but I had an aha moment that came about. So I was looking at these 2 different things, the TENS unit on the left there, 9-volt battery on the inside. And then we've got the electrosurgical unit there that can produce between 2,000 and 9,000 volts. You'll see in the red there, that one produces nerve stimulation. The one on the right, no muscle or nerve stimulation. What the heck? What's going on? So this aha moment that I had sore shoulders at the top. And so I put these pads on my shoulders, just like you see right there. That's what I was doing. And then I started to watch the football game, and my shoulders were kind of going up and down because I selected one of the modes on that TENS unit that would allow my shoulders to move up and down. All of a sudden, it hit me that I said, what the heck is going on here? And so that's when I looked at the other things. By the way, this is called transcutaneous electrosurgery or electrical nerve stimulation. Here my muscles were going up and down, but this all has to do with nerves. It has to do with blocking pain. That's the purpose for the TENS unit. That's what it does. All right, so let's all agree on something. Electricity runs the body. Everybody agree on that? Okay. Like it says, the body isn't just running the show, it is the show. Without it, your body would be as lifeless as a flashlight without batteries. And that's the truth. When you think about these other things, the heart rhythm, the brain waves, the body animation, the fact that I can do this right now, that means I probably haven't had a stroke sometime in my life, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do that, the things that we take for granted. The nerve impulses, all of this is based on electricity. And so I did some really deep stuff on this too. When I eat a cheeseburger, it converts it to electricity. It takes the proteins and all of the other things and converts those into electrical pulses that make the body work. All right, so before going forward, I want to go backwards, because in order to understand everything I'm going to talk about, I want to take you back to where this all started. In the mid-1770s with a guy by the name of Luigi Galvani. In addition to being a physician and a physicist, what he did was, well, he lived during an era where there was a lot of discoveries in electricity. So if you've gone through any technical school, it's worth their salt, you would recognize some of these names. I know you can't see it there, but by the way, you're going to get this handout. And also, this is being recorded, so you can get this as well after this is all over. So we've got Galvani there, and right below him is Volta. We've got Gauss, Oersted, Ohm, Maxwell, Edison, Gerstenwald, Tesla. Tesla is probably the one that was the smartest of all of them. He did so many things, and people just borrowed his work, and he says, if you want to, go ahead, I don't care. He was just busy doing things. So anyways, Luigi Galvani's claim to fame was when they dissected a frog, and the frog's leg were still recently dissected, he could take an amber rod and silk and rub that on that, or fur works better, by the way. Fur works better than silk. He'd rub it on there, and then he would touch the sciatic nerve on the frog's leg, and the frog's leg would move. And so every time he did that, the frog's leg would move. So he can come up with a valid hypothesis. I believe that it's an electrical shock, or it's electricity in the body that's allowing me to move my arms, legs, and everything else. So what he came up with is the relationship between electricity and animation. And at the same time, Volta was there, and he was calling all of this galvanism, like it's something the spooky that was going on. So these two kind of had a tiff, because Volta says, it's not electricity, stupid, it's a chemical reaction inside of the body. Because Volta was working with the first voltaic pile, where he's using dissimilar metals and some acidic solution, and he was creating the first batteries. So he says it's a chemical reaction, not electric. But he was wrong, because we can hook up pads to the brain and the heart, all these things. We can see that it's electricity, it's not chemical. All right, so another part of this, which is pretty important, is this guy by the name of William J. Morton. Dr. Morton focused on neurology and electrotherapy at the time. So he was a perfect person to experiment with electricity. And what he discovered is that the muscle and nerve stimulation ceased at 100 kHz. So anything over top of that, the nerves and muscles couldn't keep up, so it completely ignored it. So here we have on one side, Galvani that's saying, look, I can take this and I can make muscles and nerves be impacted by it. And he says, yeah, but if we're going to use it for other things, if you raise the frequency high enough, it's not going to do that. So we have the 60 hertz over here, which is obviously low frequency. And then we have 100 kHz muscle and nerve stimulation ceases there. And then I've highlighted this because most of electrosurgical units operate somewhere between 200 kHz and 3.3 megahertz. The Valley Lab instruments and generators operate at 470 kHz, so well above the threshold of 100 kHz. All right, so I used the one on the left here to show you 120 volts, 60 Hertz. We know what happens when you put a penny or something into the socket. Everything tightens up because I call that involuntary muscle contraction. Weren't expecting that, but that's what happens because the frequency was perfect for the muscles in the body. It's going to react to that. And over on the right-hand side is my TENS unit. And I selected one of those frequencies to work on my shoulders. You can see 9 volts between 100 and 150 Hertz. By the way, that is not for muscle stimulation. That's for nerve stimulation, like I said. So even though my muscles were working, I thought, well, this is exercising the muscles. It's not designed for that. It's designed to block pain. That's the idea. So here I set it at one of these frequencies here. Let's just say 80 Hertz, and that's why it was working. All right, the frequencies of the thought, the brain waves. This is something that as I was preparing this presentation, I looked to see, because I knew that the waves in the brain were very low. And so I looked at these, and here's a delta waveform, 0.5 Hertz to 4 Hertz. And it says that's the body's repair modes, slow, deep pulses during sleep. So the brain is not working that much, but at the same time, it's dumping all of the crap that's been going on during the day. Because I wondered, you know, what's the design of the human being such that, why do we need to sleep? Is the Gen 2 going to just say, you know, we don't need sleep anymore? But it's very, very important. Anyway, that's the delta. Then we've got the theta, taps into the imagination, the meditation, and all of those things. That's between 4 and 8. 8 to 13 brings peace, like the quiet after prayer or a sunset walk. The next one is 13 to 30, sharp focus and critical thinking. The last one is gamma, peak performance, memory, and heightened awareness. So those frequencies in the brain change depending on what we're doing. To me, that was the beginning of a book that I'm about almost finished with right now. That book is called In His Image, where the human body, what the human body reveals about God. Because there is so much in there. Yes, last night I was telling Adam about the Fibonacci, where all of the mathematical things are very consistent in the body. The way that I got started in this in the first place, I was looking at a chart in the doctor's office that says the amazing eye. So when the doctor came in, I said, do you believe that? And he said, what? I said, do you believe that the eye is amazing as it says? He goes, oh, I've been doing this for 35 years. I learn stuff all the time. It's incredible what the eye does. I mean, we really got an orb, which is a piece of meat, talking to a piece of meat. That's incredible in and of itself. So I said, so if you think it's that awesome, do you think that happened by chance? Or do you think it was created? He said, are you asking me if I believe in God? I said, no, I'm just asking you a question. And he looked down and he paused for about 15 seconds and he looked up and he said, it had to be designed. I said, well, then you answer the other part of your question then by yourself. Okay, so everything that I've talked about so far about that question, like the 9 volts versus the electrosurgical generator, slide 3, we talked about the high frequency. That's what is used in an electrosurgical generator. Slide 6, we all agreed that electricity runs the body. Slide 8, Galvani experimented with the frogs, and he says electricity is responsible for animation, meaning our ability to move all of the different limbs, etc. William Morton said, yeah, that's right, but if you raise the frequencies above 100 kHz, they will no longer respond. So I was starting to get my answer right there. So why doesn't the body react to higher frequencies? That's the $64,000 question. It says the ability of the electrical current to stimulate nerves and muscle depends not on voltage. I was looking at the wrong thing. Thousands of volts versus 9 volts. Looking at the wrong thing. It was the frequency that I should have been looking at. It says as frequently increases, our tissues simply can't keep up. So I put together an analogy here. I love analogies because it makes things easier to understand. Look at the TENS unit as though it's operating like lights operate that we stop for the stoplight. It switches green, we wait, red, you know, it's enough that we can do that. Now magnify that by 1,000 times. Green and red, green and red, green and red, green and red. This says, wait a minute, what do I do? I don't know whether I'm supposed to go or stop because it's not enough. And the muscles, nerves behave the same way. It happens so fast, it's like, I don't even know what to do. So that's why it's not impacted by that. All right, so in summary of this first question, just remember that the humans are somewhere between 1 hertz and 10,000 hertz, but most of everything that we operate mostly is down into like 250 hertz. Household AC is 60 hertz. Involuntary muscle contraction. So when a kid puts something in there, that's what they get, involuntary muscle contraction. The third one, the defibrillator. I thought about that defibrillator too, and I thought, I wonder what it is that causes the heart to go and stop. They call that depolarization. Direct muscle heart depolarization. So I knew what was happening, but I didn't know what was happening in terms of the official version. So they say depolarization. Think of it in terms of an orchestra. A defibrillator shock is like a conductor stopping all the musicians with one big gesture so they can start again in sync. In other words, everybody's out of sync. He says, whoa, stop. And then everybody can start up at the same time again. That's what the defib does. In ESUs, high frequency current is like a metronome ticking so fast that nobody can follow it. The orchestra stays in chaos and nothing comes out because it's such a high frequency. Everybody with me on this? Okay. All right. Question 2. I'm confused by all of the terms: electrocautery, electrosurgery, dithermy, hypercation, ablation. I get this question a lot. We can be in day 1 or day 2 of the class, and somebody will say, "Well, how is that like a hypercator?" Or how is that like, diathermy and all these things? So that's what I'm going to answer here. There's actually 7 of these here, starting with the TENS unit. I told you it blocks pain. This NMES, as far as I know, that's what they say. It's an NMES unit. I would call it NEMES or something, but they don't call it that. It strengthens muscles. Then we've got ultrasound, diathermy, electrocautery. The first 2 there heal tissue. The other ones, electrocautery, electrosurgery, and hypercating. They burn tissue. So I'm going to talk about these individually, and I'm going to give you an analogy so that they're very easy for you to understand. And once you understand each one individually, you know how they differ from electrosurgery. So the first one is the TENS unit. Remember I said transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. It doesn't say muscle stimulation, it's nerve stimulation. Electrical pulses through the skin to stimulate nerves to help relieve pain. That's its design. All right, down at the bottom, the TENS unit keeps your nerve so busy that the pain message gets lost in the chatter. Just as you don't feel it because it's lost. All right, the next one is the NMES, neuromuscular electrical stimulation. Notice neuromuscular, we were talking about nerves before. Now notice it stimulates nerves for the TENS unit. This one stimulates muscles and make those move. So that's the difference between those. And by the way, they look very similar. That one's the next one. That's the ultrasound. So an NMES is like a robot coach making your muscles do jumping jacks, even if you're just laying down. So it's causing the muscles to move. The next one, ultrasound, which Adam has in his hand there. Would you hold that up, please? It's a SAMS unit that I've used that too. I put this on both sides of my knees. I'm a runner. I put that on there. And what that does, by the way, SAM is the device, and SAM stands for Sustained Acoustic Medicine. And these things are filled with a gel, just like when you do ultrasound or something, they use a gel when they're using for ultrasound. Okay, it says when tissue is exposed to ultrasound, the sound waves cause a micro vibration in the tissues. So it's like a gentle shaker. It vibrates stuff deep inside without anybody pushing on it. Okay? That's what ultrasound is. The next one is dithermy. Generates heat deep inside of, it's like a heat lamp that just warms the muscles on the inside, and that's what it says here too. It's like turning on an invisible heater inside your muscles. You don't see it, but your body feels warmer and looser because of it. The next one is electrocautery. Electrocautery is something that we talk about in day one in the ESU course that Adam and I teach. By the way, Adam is taking over for me. I'm checking out. Not yet, not that way, but getting close. By the way, I was hired at this company called GE Healthcare when I was 71 years old. Who hires anybody when they're 71 years old? Unless they want what's in your head. So March of next year, it'll be 3 years, and then I'll be 74, and I said, that's enough. As much as I love working with biomeds, and I think it's my reason for being, working with biomeds all the time and helping them is, they say there's 2 important days in your life, the day you were born and the day you realize why. This is my why. So I was given a gift and I want to give it back. So that's why I'm doing it. Anyways, we talk about electrocautery. We start off by talking about what happened many thousands of years ago, where they were using this thing called a fire drill, where they were rubbing this stick together, and you see it on a lot of these survivor programs where they think they're going to start a fire, and most of them don't, but they didn't have to. All they had to do is make it hot on the end of that, and then they would put it on small vessels, and it would stop the bleeding using the heat. Electrocautery is the same thing. Yet, if you look this up in Google, it'll say electrocautery and electrosurgery are the same thing. They are not. First of all, if you're using electrosurgery, you usually have a pad, or if you're using bipolar, you don't need it. But anyway, there is current going through the tissue. I don't care which one it was. With this one, there is no current at all going through the tissue. It is a tip that glows orange hot, and they can use this for small bleeders as well. They don't have to use electrosurgery. It is a branding iron, and I think right here it'll show you that too. It's like poking something with an orange hot marshmallow stick from the fire. The stick burns whatever it touches. Yeah, you could use a soldering iron, a wood burning pencil, whatever. That's all you have to think is electrocautery. Remember though, it's external heat. No, nothing flows through the tissue. Okay, the next one is electrosurgery. That's why we're here. High frequency electrical current, high frequency being the key again. And this one is like magic scissors that cut from sending sparks into the tissue. It doesn't look hot, but it's like lightning. I mean, it's really sparking a lot. We're going to get into this much deeper in just a second. Okay, the last one here, I think it's the last one. Hypercation. It destroys small tissue growth such as warts, skin tags, and superficial lesions. We always see these in the dermatologist's office. That's where they use them. It's like electrosurgery, except that it's very low power. And down here at the bottom it says, it's like zapping a bug with an electric spark. It's a tiny power burst, just enough to sizzle it. Yeah, that's it. All right, question 3. What's the difference between cut or dissection, coagulation or hemostasis, and a blend of those two? Because I didn't know what audience I'm going to get. I don't know what background you have in electrosurgery, so I'm going to explain these real quickly. First of all, in monopolar electrosurgery, we have an active electrode. We have an active electrode, and we have a return electrode right here. One, it's called a dispersive electrode because you can see in the picture there, if you put this down on here, we have a high concentration of electrical current there because it's pointed. So you have a high concentration here. In this one is also called an electrode, a return electrode. Active electrode, return electrode. What's the difference between these two? They're both electrodes. Area, yeah, absolutely. This is 10,000 times the surface area of this. So when we're heating something down here and it's going back to the pad, it's going to a big area. It would take a lot to heat that thing up. That's why they use pads, okay? Next thing here, current flows through the body between the electrodes and returns to the generator. Now, the reason they call these return pads from my research is because they said it kept it real simple for the surgeons to understand the concept. That's why they call it a return pad. Is it a return pad? Why? Goes the other way too. It's AC. Remember, 100 kHz, right? Half the time it's going this way, half the time it's going that way. And that's why you see those red arrows there. It says it's going back and forth. So that small electrode is as much as a return as the big one. Okay. That's what I asked here. Is it really an and I asked you the difference too, and that has to do with surface area. All right. So the three basic electrosurgical procedures is cutting or vaporization. Because we have such a high concentration of electrical current here, what we do when we put it down on the tissue, whatever moisture is in that tissue, it boils that tissue so fast that it vaporizes it. So that's what we're doing when we're making a cut with electrosurgery. It's called vaporization. Coagulation, Latin for, whoops. Well, I guess I'm going to do that next. Okay, so I want to explain the waveforms for cut, blend, and coag. For cut, it's always there. That's why it heats the tissue and vaporizes it, because it never gets a rest. 100% duty cycle. Over on the right-hand side, we have the pure coag. It's only there for 6% of the time, but it hits it with a big burst. So you can see the difference between this and this. So it hits it with a bigger voltage spike, but as soon as it hits it and it starts to boil a little bit, then it stops, and it stops. I mean, it cools then. So we heat it, then it cools. In between is the blend. This is where it's a combination of cutting and coag. So the reason that the surgeons reach up and hit the blend button, or somebody else in the room does, hits that blend button, is because it's something that's going to bleed. So they want to stop the bleeding while they're creating the bleeding. So that's the blend function. I'm going to show this to you very vividly in just a second. So the idea here is as the voltage, peak-to-peak voltage goes up, the duty cycle goes down. So I can take a look at that duty cycle, and I can essentially tell you how high that peak-to-peak voltage is going to be. All right, the cut mode, as I told you, it's there 100% of the time. You put this down near the tissue, you're barely touching the top of the tissue, and it vaporizes it, as I said. Now, the reason that doctors don't use scalpels all the time, other than the initial incision, and they really wouldn't have to use it for that, but they do, creatures of habit. But once they're in there, the reason is because you have much better control with that pencil. You can cut through one layer at a time. If you had a sharp scalpel, you might go through several layers at a time. So you can see this right here, where they just touch the surface of that, and you can see the various layers that they're going through. And of course, this is the adipose, or no, not yet. That is the fat. Okay. All right, next, coagulation, Latin for to curdle. What do you think of when you think of curdle? Milk, thank you. Everybody hesitates. It's like, it's milk, but I don't want to say milk. Yeah, milk, curdle. That's what I think of. And that's what I want you to think of it as too, because they say Latin for to curdle. And that's what I think of. I think of milk becoming cottage cheese. And essentially that's what curdling is. So think of this as blood turning to something that's coagulated. We hit it really hard with a spike, it starts to boil, and then it cools. And so we get these coagulated pieces or something that stops the bleeding. Next on here, fulguration, Latin for lightning. Perfect explanation for that. Because as we use the pencil, we hold it up off of the tissue and we allow it to spark down. And it's what it's looking for is the path of least resistance. We know that in electronics, that's what you're looking for. The path of least resistance. When they hold that up, the path of least resistance it's looking at is what? The blood. So when it seals it here, done. Now I got a least path here, 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 here. And so that's what it looks like the whole time it's sparking. And we do this in class. We actually have a piece of steak. We used to have a piece of steak. But we just run out of time. There's so much we want to teach you in class that we can't do all these things. But we used to have a piece of steak there, and you could see it arcing down from that, just like it would be on regular human tissue. All right, so another thing is people ask me about the fulgurate and spray, or fulgurate and spray. What's the difference between those? Does anybody know? Anybody? See, that's why it's one of these common questions, because I get that. So this is how you will remember this forever. Okay. Fulgurate is direct and deeper. It's not water, obviously. It's an analogy, okay? And here, the spray is diffused and superficial. They choose to use one over the other depending on what they're doing in the body. If they just want to seal something because it's bleeding somewhere and it doesn't impact what's happening in the body, they just scorch it, just like close it up, doesn't matter, doesn't have any function on the body, so go ahead and do that. But here the spray, diffused and superficial. So if you look at this picture, like I said, if I'm pointing this at you right now, think that if it is, it's probably going to push in on you. So that's how I want you to think about it. If I spray, it's a wider area, but it's more superficial, so it doesn't push in. And I took one surgical procedure here. It says, because the liver is extremely vascular, it bleeds easily. When a surgeon cuts through the liver tissue, hundreds of small vessels can ooze simultaneously. Spray coag provides a broad, superficial, hemostatic or coagulated field that seals many of these bleeders quickly and without charring. So it's stopping the bleeding, but it's not impacting the liver. That's the idea. One you don't care, and one you care a lot. All right, coag mode. As you can see in this waveform here, right here, it's going bang, cool, 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 bang, cool, 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 bang. So 6% of the time, that thing is hitting. That's the way it's designed to do. And when we do that, if we compare that waveform to the cut waveform, you can see how different they are. And the effect on the tissue changes as well. So if you hold the pencil up off of the tissue, now whoever created this, they call it fulguration, but actually it's spray, because they're holding that thing so far up off the tissue. But it's just an illustration anyway. So it's going to find that path of least resistance, what it's doing there. And if we look at the force triad, I used that one because that's one of the ones we teach. The fulgurate is 6.5%. The spray is even lower than that, which means that the waveform is going to be higher. The lower the duty cycle, the higher the waveform. Okay. Then I compare this. When they call that lightning, fulguration lightning, that's exactly the same. If you're out on a golf course, just looking for the path of least resistance, is probably the golfer. Him? That's shocking. Okay, the next one, desiccation, Latin for to dry up. We use desiccants in pill bottles and electronic components, anything, so that we can absorb the moisture. That's the whole idea. So with that, what we're doing, if we're in the cut mode or the coag mode, all we do is put the pencil on the surface of the tissue, and then when we activate it, you can see that the cut goes deeper and wider because it's there 100% of the time compared to the coag. In class, I tell, by the way, I want to give this to you too, because I got about 10 reasons why doctors use the blue button almost exclusively. And when I was at Medtronic 2 times a year, I had to go in to an OR and see how surgeons were using our equipment. It was part of my yearly thing. And sure enough, they hit the blue button. They're not hitting anything else. And so afterwards, I asked the surgeon, I said, I noticed by watching you and how you were using the equipment, I already knew the answer, but I said, I noticed that you used the blue button almost exclusively. Can you explain why you did that? He said, yes, that's the way I was trained in school. By the way, last night while I was doing nothing, I went on to ChatGPT and I asked, how much training, classroom training like this, do surgeons get about electrosurgery? And they said, it's almost nothing. They get all of their training when they're out with a mentor, and that's how they learn. So it's not so much that they learn how to do the procedure, they don't know the background of why they're doing it, just like it's a return pad, but they don't have any understanding of electricity at all. So that's okay, as long as they're good at surgery. All right, so when we put that down onto the skin and we activate it, again, we're not moving it, we're just holding it right there. This is, if I magnified this under a microscope, this is what we're doing to the skin. We're drying it up. All right, the next one, ablation, Latin, to carry away. Really what we're doing is heating and coagulating large volumes of tissue. And here's one example of where they put the probe into the tumor laparoscopically. At the very end is the only place that there's energy. As a matter of fact, the rest of it is cooled with ice water. So there's no peripheral damage whatsoever. It's all concentrated on the middle of the tumor. So they monitor it with ultrasound until they completely ablate it, or they take everything away that's a problem in there. They take the tumor away and it looks like that. The ones that they use now, they're looking like this. So when they put it in, it can expand out, and so we can cover more of the area than we could just with that probe. All right, so we've got RF ablation units and we have microwave ablation units. So these are Covidian products. This one is called Cool Tip. Cool Tip, again, it's not really a cool tip. That part of it is hot. The tip is hot, but the rest of it is cooled with the ice water. This one, the microwave, is called VT Gen, and they use 3 generators or ablation units there, and they put it down 3 different probes into something, and they can destroy it much quicker. So you got a choice between RF and microwave. All right, blend and cut and coag. Here you can see, this is where I really like this slide because it shows you the cut waveform. It shows you the blend waveform, it shows you coag. In every case, we're using 50 watts. But look at the difference of what happens. Here, if you're doing just a straight cut, again, this comes from something from class where you can see if you use just the cut, it makes a nice cut. As a matter of fact, they say, I can't even believe that it did anything. And I open up, ooh, wow, it's like a razor blade. When you cut through, you can't see anything until you spread it apart. That's the way the cut works. Over here, in contrast, the doctors that are only hitting the blue button are getting this. They say, is it cutting? Oh, yeah, it's cutting. But that charring translates into 2 things: more pain for the patient and slower healing. Those 2 things. And so I'm going to give you that thing. It says part of it is that's the way they were learning. Part of them it says, while I'm doing my operation, I'm cutting with that. I just want to make sure nothing bleeds when I'm all done with this. I don't want any ramifications after this, after I close up. So there's like 10 reasons why they use that blue button. In the center is the blend. That's where we're taking the cut and the coag. So while we're creating the bleeding, we're also stopping the bleeding. So that's why they would use that. Any questions on that? Yes. Pardon me? I just slapped him a couple times. That's all I could do. You know, I had to get his attention. No, I didn't tell him that he was doing it wrong. I just wanted to know, you know, you don't talk back to God. Yeah? All right, so notice the peripheral damage here, the unintended consequences of this, where we've actually damaged things that were not done over on the cut side at all. All right, question number 4. How are bipolar and vessel sealing the same, and how are they different? All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is bipolar. We have active and return in the same instrument. We don't use the pad anymore because everything is confined in between the two tines of the instrument. Where is it? Right here. So it's all concentrated there. They use this for very small vessels. And if somebody is wearing a pacemaker, you don't want electrosurgery monkey in with that. So if they're near that at all, they're usually using bipolar because of that. Because electricity isn't going to leave here and go scouting and go up there, and it goes between here and here. As a matter of fact, in class, what we'd do is we'd put that down on a piece of meat and just activate it, and it'd just fry everything in between the two times. Okay. Relatively low voltage. Keyword there is relatively, because I get a lot of students that say 300 to 1200, that's a lot of voltage. Yeah, but not compared to 9,000. So that's why I say relatively. All right, used for delicate tissue in confined surgical areas. We use it in laparoscopic procedures, spinal cord, neurosurgery, and ophthalmology. Very, very small vessels. Pardon me? You use it in ophthalmology? Boy, that kind of bothers me when I think about it, that they've got something in there on those small vessels of the eye. I'd say I'll keep an eye out for you. All right, so the forceps, they're called something different. Doesn't mean anything to me, Semcon, bayonet, or angled. That's where they're using them. I mean, where they have to access, but the forceps are still, everything is confined in between them. All right, I want to go now to the vessel sealing part of this. When I was talking about them using this thing called a fire drill where they would heat the end of that, I was also talking about back in the day, they would heal or they would stop bleeding in small vessels with that hot stick. But then they had battlefield wounds where people were gushing blood. That wasn't going to work anymore. You had to have something very hot that wouldn't even work. And so they had to come up with a way of using a wire or string to stop the bleeding. And they would use this technique called ligature. And if you look that up in the dictionary, it says something that is used to bind, something that unites or connects. So they were using string or they were using wire to do that. Over time, we've seen them use clips to stop the bleeding. We've also seen staples. This is the next version of going from staples. And we use these things called a ligature instrument. That's what Valley Lab calls these, or Covidian Medtronic. I get so confused. Ligature, they called this concept of ligature what they were doing, and they changed this from a marketing standpoint, and they said it's not ligature, it's ligature. In other words, you can count on it. But that was the biggest struggle that they ran into when they first introduced this, is because they had such good success with clips and staples that when they were going to go to this, they said, I don't know, I don't want to lay awake at night thinking somebody's going to hemorrhage, so I'm not sure. And so Covidian, being an evidence-based company, what they did was they took a vessel and they sealed one end of it, and then they put a probe down in there, and they applied 3 times the amount of pressure the heart could possibly produce. The goal was to see where it was going to burst. 100% of the time, it would burst through the vessel walls instead of through that seal that they had. I'm going to show you why that is here, I think, next. So we have a ligature jaw here. We put this across the bigger vessels, and then we heat that up, and then a razor blade comes through the center there and cuts it so that it's sealed on both sides. We've got tissue fusion only, and we've got the ones that are sealers and dividers where we can use the razor blade. So here's the idea. Inside of the vessel is called the lumen. That's where the blood flows. When we seal a vessel, it's a combination of pressure, energy, and time. That's what seals it. The pressure is all predetermined too. When you put that across the vessel and you click it shut, you can let go of it. It's all predetermined. That means you couldn't put more pressure than you. It's the way it is, okay? And then energy, you would either hit the button on the back of the instrument or you'd use the foot pedal on the floor. It would seal that with the heat or the energy, it would produce heat. And then the last part of this is time. Depending on how thick that they were putting this across, it would take longer. But what they would always wait for is, does anybody know? What are they waiting for? An audio indication. It goes beep, beep. That tells the surgeon, okay, you can run the razor blade through there now. But if you're impatient and you don't wait for the double beep and you run that razor blade through there and you got blood squirting all over, now they've got to release from there and put it there because now they've got a problem. So that's what they're waiting for in here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I've got a hysterectomy that you're going to see that last black thing there. You're going to see a hysterectomy where they're using this. I want you to pay attention. If you can hear it, I'm not even sure that they've got my audio hooked up, but anyways, it's a double beep. All right, so what we do when we seal that, it is fusing collagen and elastin in the body. The body is comprised of 25% of elastin and collagen. And being so new to electrosurgery, when I started, I went to the expert. The expert was a hotline nurse. They'd been in all kinds of practices for more than 30 years, and their purpose was that if anybody called anytime during the day, 24/7, and they'd say, you know, I'm using a Megadyne generator and I'm using one of your instruments, can I do the following thing? And she'd have one of three answers. Yes, go ahead, it'll work just fine. 2, no, you need an adapter if you're going to do that. Or number 3, don't do it. So these two women were very, very valuable. Just about 3 months after they let the biomed training team go, they let these women go. And I thought, you people, these two women were more valuable to the company than the CEO and what they were given in terms of their understanding, not only of our stuff, but everybody else's stuff as well. That's a lot. All right, so when I went to her and I asked her, I said, can you explain vessel sealing or tissue fusion to me? And she stopped. She says, I'm going to put this in terms that you understand. I thought, well, I'm not stupid. That's not what she meant. What she meant was, I'm going to put this in the terms that biomeds use every day. She said, biomeds use solder, which is essentially tin, and at the time it was lead. And she says, is that flexible when you're using it? I said, oh, you bet. She said, what happens when you heat it? I said, you're not going to bend it anymore. It combines those two things together and it's solid. She says, that's the same thing that happens with elastin and collagen. Okay. So I'm going to try this, and I hope it works, because this, how come what I'm looking at on my screen here doesn't look the same? I don't think I can activate. I'm sure if I go to the show, it's going to ruin that. I don't want to do it. I may try it at the end. Because what I see on the screen here is the little slides. I don't see the big one. Otherwise, I could click on that. Should I take a chance? Okay. What the heck? All right. Probably. Hey, it's technology. I'm not touching it. Not only that, but I'm at 48 minutes and I'm doing good here, so we gotta go. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now what? Oh no.
I did. I'm trying to push it out.
So what do I need to do here? Oh, wait, whoa. Let me do this. See if this comes up. Nope, it's got to switch over to another one.
You want this one?
Yep. Okay. So that's what's happening. We're putting that across the tissue there. We're heating it up with the energy, and then the razor blade comes through after this has been denatured or combined together. And then the razor blade comes through, and you can see that it's sealed on both sides. There you go. So you can see that it's sealed on both sides. Now, I want to also show, stay right there, you're doing well. I want to show you the one other one. Okay, hit this one. I want to do the hysterectomy. Okay, there you go. Okay, so here you can see an actual case where they're using it. What you can't hear at the end is the double beep, because that's when they put the razor blade through there. My wife is out moving the bird cages. I can tell because it's going through my hearing aid. Got the Ring cameras out there anytime something moves out there. All right, that's good. Thanks. Can you give me back to my presentation?
Smoke evacuator.
Yeah, they should have the smoke evacuator here. Yes. That's one of the things that we talked a lot about. Number one, use the yellow button. The other one, use the smoke evacuator, because there's carcinogens in that smoke that are very damaging. Okay, so here's the collagen and the elastin. The collagen gives the tissue strength. The elastin gives it the elasticity. All right, so how are bipolar and vessel sealing the same? Well, they both use, whether it's a forceps or this, we use two electrodes there that we're using. We don't have to have a pad. Energy is confined between those two jaws or the two tines of the forceps. No patient return pad needed, and hemostasis by, I learned a new word, coaptive coagulation. Coaptive means something that fits together is joined together. So both techniques achieve hemostasis by compressing tissue, and that's how it does it. Now, how are they different? The easiest way to do that is if I'm talking about forceps, they're just a piece of metal that we're putting together, so there's no intelligence there at all. Over on the right side, we can go up to 7 millimeters, so it's not a tiny vessel anymore. We're getting big amounts of tissue there, and everything is computer controlled all the way down through there. It's taking a look at what is in there. It takes an algorithm to say this is what it needs. It monitors it while it's doing it, etc. So that's the big difference between the two. All right, question 5. What are cross-coupling checks and why are they important when doing PMs on ESU? Adam and I noticed this in class, that a lot of people don't know why they're doing those cross-coupling checks. They said, I'm activating mono 1. Why am I not checking mono 1? I said, because you don't want to. If you're activating mono 1, you want to say, how much leakage do I have out of mono 2, which I don't want. So here, you can see the leakage. I mean, it's just dripping right out of mono 2 right there. That's leakage. And so really, when we're doing cross couplings, if we're activating mono 1, we want to take a look at mono 2. Now, there is some leakage out of mono 2 because it's using the same circuitry. So you are going to get some leakage if it's using the same circuitry, but you should have nothing between the mono 1 and below the bipolar or the ligature, completely separate circuits. So you want to make sure that you're doing those checks. And the reason, patient injuries, surgical precision, and the ESU behavior must match the surgeon's expectations. So that's why we do those. It's a big part of the PM for us in class. Okay, yes. You could, that's where it really comes into effect. We're not doing that when we're checking it, but yes, that's where it would. I mean, you could have something laying there or somebody doing something else with it that, yeah, you don't want anything coming out of that. Or what we do is we know that's got to be on less than 150 milliamps. And if we check it and it's like somewhere in between, in that case where it was 49, I think it was was somewhere halfway, something like that, but it's well within the limits. But yes, exactly what you're talking about. Okay, what does buzzing the hemostat mean? When we mention this sometimes, this is the reason surgeons burn holes in their gloves. Heard that before? You know, they hit the top of it and they say, it's broke. That's what you get when it comes back, it's broke. And you've got to try to figure out what it is. Okay, buzzing the hemostat, what does it mean? In class, we talk about how generators work, wherever that electrode is, it completes a loop back to the generator. So we're taking into consideration what tissue resistance we're running into. You can see the human body has a lot of different resistances, from muscle, eye, skin, kidney, pancreas, liver, gallbladder, all the way up. So when that comes through and runs into a higher resistance, it's looking at this, and in the generator, it's changing voltage and current because that controls power. It's constantly doing that. All right, so I'm only telling you that because right now I want to talk about buzzing the hemostats because it's way down there, it's low. Buzzing the hemostats is when they don't care to use the forceps. They are a bipolar device. Instead, they take the forceps and they put it across the vessel. And then they take the pencil and they bring the pencil over there and put it on to the forceps that they're using. We say, you're not supposed to do that, but the surgeons don't listen to us anyway because they know it works. But I give two precautions to the biomeds. One, they better not be keying it before they get there, because if they do, they're going to get an arc because it's going to jump from the end of the electrode to the forceps. That's number one. You also get some capacitive coupling there, which is why they burn it through the gloves. And the second thing is, we say, if you're going to do that, tell them to make sure that they hold on to it. The more area you have, the better you are. If you're one of those person like, I'm afraid of that thing, now you've created a high concentration area here if you're only using a little bit of it. So we caution them in both ways. We say don't do it, but they do it anyway, but there's a way you can tell them to do it safer anyway. Okay, number 7, moving along. I keep hearing about AEM as it applies to electrosurgery. Can you explain what AEM is? All right, so students have told me over and over again, a hospital bought a device that monitors the ESU output for safety. It's called an EAM. Reality, there is no standalone safety box for this, number one. The truth is AEM is built in. It's built into the generator, like the FT10. It's built into the instruments as well. That's what that does. And it comes back to what we said before. The AEM is active electrode monitoring. The generator has internal monitoring circuitry. The instruments have a conductive shield and an RFID chip. If you're using LigaSure and FT10, it's got an RFID chip in there because it says it's this kind of an instrument. And the RFID is for more than that, it's for counterfeiting and everything else. But together they shut down the power if stray current is detected. So it's technology within. Down at the bottom, no shield, no chip, no protection. That's it. All right. Question 8, why are there so many names for patient return electrodes? That's the common term for patient return electrodes. And we can divide those into two types of pads, a single section pad that has no protection, that somebody can get burned with that, or we have a dual section pad, and they're made different ways, dry adhesive, water-based gels. The Valley Lab pads happen to be made from a water-based gel, which means that they have 50% water in the gel, which means it's very good for conduction, and you know, that's what you want. You want that good conduction when you're doing electrosurgery. All right, so here's all of the names: ARM, NESI, CQM, REM, all of those different names. And I'm going to leave this because if you're going to get this presentation, this is an eye chart here. So, but read that and you'll see the technology that's used. It's all basically the same. It's contact quality monitoring, meaning how well is that pad on the patient? Because the more the pad comes off, the more you've got a hot spot in an area that's going to cause a burn. All right, question number 9. I would like to know if my ESU analyzer is acceptable for testing. I get that a lot. And I've been into a lot of shops where somebody, and I look at this old antiquated thing, I said, that thing won't work. How is it that you're signing off on this? You can't possibly be doing everything that's required in that PM using. He says, I know, but we do the best we can. I thought, dude, you're signing off on that. You could be liable. And I knew of a case that happened where there was somebody got burned in a hospital, and they came back and talked to the biomed about what they did. Now, it all turned out, and the biomed was absolved from any this problem, but just know when you're signing your name to it, be careful. So of all these generators, the thing that I worried about at the time is if you're doing anything with a calibration, you had to have a 1K, 2K, 3K, and a 5K. Most of yours don't have that. There's a couple analyzers out there that can do it, but not that many. The other thing that I know about BC Group is that they can handle both continuous and pulsed waveform. To me, it's the only one in the world that I know of that can do both of them. So you can say, well, we only do continuous. I said, but is that what you're going to do 2 years from now? You don't know. So that's why I just mentioned that here. The last question, the biggest one. OEMs aren't willing to sell us parts or give us passwords. So why would we spend money to go to an ESU course? I get that one a lot too. That's true. And first thing there, 5 days in class can save you $5,000 in a service or sending something back. I know that for sure because one of the biggest problems in the Force Triad, I know they're end of life now, but at the time, the biggest problem they were having is a 300 error. 300 error said the scanners aren't working correctly. And people would call me afterwards and said, I just sent this back to the OEM. And I said, oh, I wish you would have let me know this before you sent that back in. I could have saved you $5,800 because as soon as that goes back to Medtronic, they're going to change all of the scanners. They don't have to be changed. All you have to do is hit the camera button and see, is it shining down? Is it able to see whatever's in the port there? So there's so many of these things, and I'm going to give you the rest of them here. You may not be able to fix everything, but after the class, you'll know what can be fixed because there's a lot that we're sending back to the OEM right now that we don't need to be sending back. And oh, we do too. That guy right there. I've taught it for probably 5 years. Yep. Yeah, don't call Medtronic because they'll lie to you. They'll say, yeah, we do it, and you call the place at the number they give you and say, we don't offer that. So, no, we do everything in class. We provide the theory. We tear down all of the boxes, put them back together, make them work after we tear them down. We used to do calibrations. We're not doing that now because if I were to ask in here, how many of you have ever done a calibration on a generator? That's what I thought. That's why we don't. You've done it? Did you do it in class?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
I also did, one of the doctors we have were very particular, and he insisted that this one machine wasn't working, and insisted that he watch us calibrate. So I had to sit there looking like I was calibrating it while, doing a standard ESU test.
Now you know why I'm retiring. Well, anyways, normally, if you can go in and you can look to see when the last calibration was, it was usually like 17 years ago. If the outputs are good, you don't have to calibrate. It's not like a lot of medical equipment where you have to do a calibration. This one, you do the output checks. If they're good, like they say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because you can really do a lot of damage if you're doing a calibration. You can damage that wasn't there before. And that's why I've cautioned Adam. We show you how to do it and we give you a step-by-step, but I caution you, if you're using the wrong load, for example, and I put it up at the top, make sure this load is higher than 1K. And if they forget because they used it on the last step, they will burn it up. So it's not worth it. All right, that's the last question, and there's a bunch. There's the other ones here. Gain knowledge in electrosurgical principles. Many issues don't require parts; they require knowledge. Be a safety sentinel, meaning you ought to know the bad things in a PM that are causing burns and stuff like that. Be the smartest voice in the room. Knowledge is power. I'd say whenever you can get training, get training. PM knowledge and use of ESU analyzers. Train now, be ready later when the pendulum swings the other way, because it's going to. It's going to come to the point where somebody is going to have an opportunity to say, we'll sell you the product and we will support you along the way. All of the other ones are going to be in tough luck at that point. Training builds trust with surgeons, nurses, and leadership. OEMs can withhold parts, but they can't withhold your expertise. So those are the reasons. So that's all I have for those questions. Now it's your turn. Try to stump me. I always like that.